So new iPads, right? And essentially it's the same. A new iPad or group of iPads every single year. Except there's been a gap of iPads between the last one and this one, and that gap is 2 whole years. So my question is, in that span of 2 years, has Apple made a big enough of a difference to warrant these new iPads? And I guess stick around to find out. Alright, so essentially, I mean, it's an iPad Pro. It looks almost the same, and quite honestly feels almost the same. But, I mean, there still are a few meaningful changes I would like to cover. And so speaking of that, you know, Apple had all of this talk about the new iPad being the thinnest product they've ever made. And like, I mean, yeah, like that's true, of course. 5.1 millimeters, I believe. But my question more so is just like, why? Like, why put all of this extra effort into creating a thin iPad when I personally believe others might like a thicker one? Like, I believe the iPad is plenty thin and sleek, and in some cases, maybe even too thin. So like, for me personally, I would rather see maybe a thicker iPad. You know, maybe instead of 5 millimeters, it's 10 to 15 millimeters. And then maybe that also brings longer battery life as well, right? This part makes me laugh. But on the topic of design, what on earth is that camera bump? I mean, okay, literally every circle has a different circumference, making it look much more like an unfinished product. And in all honesty, I just don't really like it. But hey, I mean, at least the front camera is actually positioned towards the middle where it should have been, well, all along. You know, I believe one of the things that make the iPad so good are the accessories that comes with it. So maybe these accessories will breathe new life into the iPad. But if you take a look, the new iPad Pro has an all-new Magic Keyboard. From its slightly new hinge design to its aluminum and silicone mixed body. I mean, of course there are some awesome and useful things, like for example the function row being added, but then it's also just like, why not make the whole body aluminum, you know, instead of like have the top aluminum and the bottom silicone, just make it all aluminum, right? Then it really would feel more like a MacBook. And of course, there is the new Apple Pencil Pro. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely cool. There are a lot of nice features that have been added. Like for example, the new haptic engine, as well as a software feature called Barrel Roll, which, you know, just makes the Apple Pencil even more amazing for creatives. But an additional Apple Pencil just honestly makes the lineup a bit more confusing, and so you almost need a cheat sheet to tell you like what Apple Pencil works with what device, and it's a bit more confusing, so I think that's just something to think about. So I know this review has sounded a bit more negative, and for me personally, the new iPad Pro just isn't worth it, right? Because I've been using the older iPad Pro, so the jump from one to the other just is not for me. But of course, there are a few really awesome things that have been changed, and I want to talk about them right now. So for example, they've finally added a brighter display with peak HDR brightness of up to 1600 nits. And if you're wondering how they achieved this, it's by stacking 2 separate OLED panels on top of each other. And you know, this is something I really appreciate. I do want a much brighter iPad screen. And they're calling this, you know, double stacked technology, tandem OLED technology. I don't know. It is what it is, but I do think the extra brightness is, of course, awesome. But you also can't forget M4. So Apple unveiled the M4 processor in the iPad Pro. And yes, it will most definitely be quicker and more powerful than the previous iPad. But I still have the question of like, what are you gonna do with that extra power, right? Like, I mean, it just feels like it's giving you more, and maybe with iPadOS 18, there'll be a lot less limits on what you can do with it, and of course put it to use. But I mean, right now, like, yeah, there's Final Cut Pro in the iPad, which I will admit I would like to have more power on, so of course there is that. But that's just, of course, something to keep in mind for now. So now for the verdict. So I have not covered every new feature of these iPads, and I'm honestly not going to be buying any this year. It's just that they aren't right for me. Right. However, I do believe there are some phenomenal upgrades to these iPads, especially if you're someone who hasn't upgraded, you know, in 3 or more years, right? Like, that's when it starts to become a bit better of an upgrade decision. But of course, feel free to go, check them out, go see them, maybe even go buy one. But that's really been it. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, as it helps me out a ton. I enjoyed making this video, guys. What do you think about like the set behind me? I've played with colors and stuff a little bit just to see if we can bring a bit more life into it. But hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see y'all in the next one. So yeah, bye guys.